Range healed. Gold fever ran high in Mammoth Camp, touching all save Rip Campbell, the piano player and the old outlaw, Ned Jones. As his fingers flashed over the keyboard of the battered piano in the Tamarack house, Rip tried to make himself believe that music was his life. That guns and death would claim no part. And yet as he stared out at the crowd which packed the big smoke-filled room, his blue eyes were troubled and there was a set, strained expression on his young face, as if he didn't believe his own thoughts. Without missing a note, Rip leaned over to the bald-headed oldster, who sat next to him, scraping away on an ancient fiddle. "You shouldn't have come here, Ned," Rip said sharply, his voice carrying above the clatter of the piano and the squeak of the violin. "If he can't be happy, he's better off dead." "Or in the penitentiary at Carson City," Rip said bluntly. "It'll be life this time if they catch you." "They won't." Up on the small stage above the piano, Happy Hines, a juggler, was doing fancy things with Indian clubs. "It was too early to come out of the hills. You should have waited another month." Old Ned Jones looked at Rip over the top of the violin. He was as ancient and battered as the fiddle under his chin. "I'm through running, Rip. Me playing fiddle to your piano is the only happiness I got left." While Rip and old Ned Jones played soft music, no one paid much attention to the act. Night in Mammoth Camp meant only an interlude when men could drink and gamble and await the rise of the sun, so that they could return to their diggings for more gold. The hooded overhead lamps caught the feverish light in the eyes of every gambler, every miner, every dance-hall girl in the Tamarack house, as their thoughts turned to the yellow metal which men were digging out of the earth, here at the foot of the Sierras. Rip Campbell's thoughts were not on gold or his claim at the foot of Cloudy Mountain. He was thinking of the debt he owed Ned Jones. His forehead was pinched in a frown and a lock of yellow hair fell across his brow as he bent to pound out a chord for the finish of Happy Hines' act. There was a splatter of applause and the juggler ducked into the wings off the small stage. Old Ned Jones put down his fiddle and ran a hand over his seamed, leathery face. He still showed signs of the prison pallor put there by 7 years spent behind the walls of the pen at Carson City. "I got lonesome up there in the hills," Ned said, as if trying to justify his sudden appearance in Mammoth Camp. "We're partners, ain't we?" Rip stared moodily at the crowd which milled around the big place. "What about the Lancaster brothers?" he asked Ned. The old man lifted a mug of beer from the floor by his chair. He took a sip and sat there, staring at Rip, ignoring the fuzz the foam had put on his long gray mustache. "If the Lancasters come, I'll be ready for them," he said in his wheezy old voice. "Don't be mad, Rip. I had to come." When Rip thought of the Lancaster, his cheeks grew hot and a cold rage simmered in his stomach. Automatically his hand went to his left side, where a bullet from Mitch Lancaster's gun had almost taken his life. And as he sat there before the piano, he could not forget that he was alive only because of Ned Jones. He remembered the adventure of coming across the mountains from San Francisco with a theatrical troupe, 6 months before. The dazzle and glitter of Virginia City, the fabulous Piper's Opera House. The old man with the pale face, who was Ned Jones, hanging around with a battered fiddle under his arm. Then the night backstage when Mitch Lancaster had come in feeling mean and full of whiskey. He came to take out one of the girls in the show. Seeing that Mitch Lancaster was drunk, Rip said, "Better wait until another night. Rose told me to tell you she doesn't feel well." Whereupon Lancaster cursed at Rip and accused him of horning in. The two men went at it, and when Rip knocked Lancaster spinning, the man came up with an oath and a smoking gun in his hand. His bullet dropped Rip to the floor. That was when old Ned Jones, who had been hanging around the stage door with his fiddle, threw a slug from a big gun that caught Lancaster in the leg. And as he lay there on the floor, Rip remembered Lancaster's words. "Damn you, Ned Jones. I'll get you for this. Me and my brother will be on your tail till hell freezes over." The show moved back to San Francisco, but Rip was weak and sick. And as the weeks passed, he got back his strength in the little shack where Ned lived on the edge of Virginia City. There was blood poisoning and a long battle, but the old man pulled Rip through. All those things Rip remembered, and he knew he owed a debt. But he believed there was a way to pay that debt. Pay it without guns, without the smell of powder smoke and the letting of blood. And he must find a way. Bert Tolliver, who owned the Tamarack house, came over, leaving a trail of cigar smoke in his wake. He put his big hands on the brass rail that set the musicians apart from the rest of the crowd. "Nice fiddling, old-timer," he said to Ned Jones. "All the musicians who come here to work quit to dig gold after the first day. That is, all except Rip. He does his digging in the daytime, his playing at night. Rip's a smart boy." Rip let his fingers run over the keyboard as he looked up at Tolliver, trying to read what lay behind those black eyes. He saw the sheen of expensive cloth in his black suit, the sparkle of the diamond in his shirt. For the month that Rip had been playing the piano in the Tamarack house, he had never gotten close to Tolliver. The man was cold, aloof, and yet there were times when his eyes seemed to lose their frost and a human smile touched his lips. Rip said, "He's a friend of mine, of Ned Jones. Passing through. He isn't staying in Mammoth." "We'll let the old man decide that," Tolliver said coldly. He turned to Ned Jones, who sat hunched in his chair, his old eyes wary. "Stick with me and do your fiddling. I'll make it worth your while." Before Ned Jones could answer, Tolliver turned his broad back and held up his hands, bellowing for silence. The noise in the big saloon tapered off, as all eyes swung to the big man. Folks said that Tolliver had won the Tamarack house on the turn of a card. Since that time, his was the only voice of authority in Mammoth. So far no one had questioned that authority. Tolliver's voice was a rumble in the big room. "We've got some hard-working boys here," he said, jerking a heavy thumb over his shoulder at Rip and Ned behind the brass rail. "If you gents want to dance, don't forget to pay off." From then on, silver dollars and gold pieces were tossed over the brass rail at Rip and Ned Jones. And Rip saw the old man's face light up as he tucked his fiddle under his bony chin. The dance floor was crowded as miners and cowboys and Easterners in white shirts and low-heeled shoes swung Tolliver's percentage girls to the music. And as the music rolled on and sweat put a shine on Rip Campbell's tan face, he forgot about the Lancaster brothers and their guns. Then when he and Ned Jones paused for breath and the dance floor cleared, it was all brought back to him. Ned pulled a long-barreled gun from his belt and laid it on the floor by his chair. "Can't get my wind with that shooting iron poking me in the belly," Ned Jones said with a grin. Rip's eyes were on the gun and he felt his mouth go dry. He was thinking of Mitch Lancaster and the pain and shock of the bullet from his gun. He went over to where Bert Tolliver leaned against the wall, his somber eyes on the drunken crowd. When Tolliver saw him, he asked, "Come to take my offer for your claim?" Rip shook his head. Tolliver looked down at the piano player, seeing the clean-cut features, the yellow hair and metallic blue eyes. "You say you want music here," Rip said. "Will you help my friend, the fiddle player, if there's trouble?" For a minute Tolliver didn't answer. Then he said, "I reckon a man like Ned Jones can take care of himself." Rip's blue eyes showed their surprise. "You know Ned?" Tolliver grunted. "Who hasn't heard of the fiddle-playing curly wolf who used to ride as tough a bunch as ever come out of the hills? His boys rode into a bushwhack trap one time and Ned was the only one to come out alive. He just got out of the pen at Carson City after doing a stretch. That isn't any sign he isn't all right now." For a minute, Tolliver didn't answer, then he looked over at the railed-in enclosure beneath the stage where Ned Jones was sawing away on his old fiddle. "I wouldn't bet a plug dollar on him. I hear the law's looking for him again." Rip's face whitened. "You know the story. I guess there's no use in trying." He turned to go back to the piano and Tolliver said, "Who wants Ned's hide nailed to the fence this time?" Rip swung back, new hope showing in his eyes. "The Lancaster brothers, they're detectives for the Mountain and Central Line. A month ago the station agent at Washoe Junction was held up and $5,000 in bullion that was waiting to be shipped, was stolen. The Lancaster brothers say it was Ned and one of his old partners." A cold smile rippled for a moment on Tolliver's lips. "That sounds like Ned Jones, all right." Rip shook his head emphatically. "He didn't do it. Washoe Junction is a good 30 miles from Virginia City, where Ned and I were living. He was with me the night of the robbery, dead drunk." "You've got a good claim up on Cloudy Mountain. You've got a good job here," Tolliver told him. "You're a smart kid, Rip, but you're wasting your time with Ned Jones. You can't reform an old coot like him. He'll drop that fiddle and go gunning for some gent's poke the minute the sign is right. I've seen too many of them." Rip's face went tight. "He saved my life and stuck by me when my friends pulled out and left me for dead. I haven't forgotten that." Only by a slight lift of his heavy black brows did Tolliver show that the earnest note in Rip's voice had touched him. "What you want me to do?" he asked finally. "You want music here. Why can't you discourage the Lancasters if they show up? You just about run things in Mammoth Camp." Tolliver smiled thinly at the lasts. "Thanks for the compliment." He put a match to the cigar he took from his breast pocket. When he had it going, he said, "You're taking it the hard way, teaming up with Ned Jones. But if that's the way you want it, I'll see what I can do." Dawn was graying the eastern sky when Rip and old Ned Jones trudged down the main street of Mammoth Camp toward Rip's claim on Big Fish Creek. "You stay out at the diggings," Rip told Ned. "Keep out of sight until we're sure the Lancasters didn't follow you when you quit the hills." But Ned Jones was stubborn. And that night when Rip went down the slant toward the garish lights of Mammoth Camp, old Ned Jones walked at his side, fiddle case under his arm. Rip made another plea as they neared the town. There was a new light in Ned's eyes as he looked at Rip. After a gent spent most of his life riding a smoky trail and took 7 years at Carson Pen, he ain't worried about the future. Ned patted the old fiddle case with a weathered hand. "I can drop this and make my music with a 6-shooter, if the Lancasters come." "You should have stuck to music instead of the gun," Rip said and regretted his words the moment they were uttered. But Ned Jones only smiled as they walked on down toward Mammoth Camp. "Music and guns do mix, Rip. A drunk school teacher come out to our ranch when I was a kid. He left St. Louis to get away from his wife. He was a long-haired duck with a solemn face and he taught me to play the fiddle. But afterwards he took another name, and folks got to know him as Smokey Jack Rogers, as tough a gun slammer as ever rode a long trail. Smokey Jack Rogers liked the owl hoot, I never did. It was badge toters like the Lancasters that pushed me into it." Rip was thoughtful for a moment, as they swung into the main street of Mammoth Camp. "I still say you can keep out of trouble and avoid using guns. But you have to hold in your temper and figure another way out." Ned Jones laughed at that. "Mitch Lancaster wasn't bothering with such fancy stuff the night he put a slug in you at Virginia City." And Rip felt his cheeks grow hot, for he knew the old man spoke the truth. Rip Campbell expected trouble. He could tell by the way his fingers tightened over the piano keys, by the tense feeling in his wrists. It was just before midnight when the Lancasters walked in and sat with their backs to the wall by the front door. Rip shot a quick glance at Ned, but the old man had not seen the pair of railroad detectives. "Going to stretch my legs," Rip told Ned. "Scratch out a number on your fiddle." He wondered if Ned caught the strained note in his voice. He guessed not, for the old man swung into a tune and the dance floor filled up. Rip's knees felt weak as he walked over to where Bert Tolliver stood at the end of the bar. He looked up at the big gambler and nodded toward the front door. "The Lancasters just came in," he said, and stood there, waiting for some emotion to show on Tolliver's cold face. "Anybody can come here, and that includes the Lancasters. But he can drink as long as he doesn't start trouble," Tolliver said. "That goes for railroad detectives as well as anybody else." "But you said you'd help." Tolliver looked at the end of the cold cigar he took from his lips. "I only said that I'd see what I could do. What if Ned and the Lancasters shoot it out here?" There was a thread of tension in Rip's voice. "Ned won't go to prison without a fight." "You've got to play the cards the way they fall," Tolliver said. "You'll learn that after you've been in this country a while." Anger brought dark blood to Rip Campbell's cheeks. He turned on his heel and threaded his way through the crowd. So far, the jam of customers in the big saloon had screened Ned Jones from the eyes. But any minute they might spot the old outlaw. When Mitch Lancaster saw Rip walking toward him, his narrow, vicious face went tight with rage. He started to get out of his chair, but Carl Lancaster put a big hand on his brother's wrist, forcing him back down. Carl Lancaster was a good 70 pounds heavier than his brother. His face was square and his eyes were a dirty green, murky as unwashed bottled glass. "You're the damn piano player that got me a bullet," Mitch Lancaster said. He glared up at Rip, who stood beside the table. Then he turned to his brother. "Ned Jones put a slug in my leg on account of this gent." A cold smile touched Carl Lancaster's big mouth. "That slug was worth a lot of money," he said softly. Rip leaned forward, his slim hands resting on the tabletop. His stomach seemed to get hollow and cold, but he fought to keep his voice level. "I know why you're here, so let's not beat around the bush." Mitch Lancaster's thin lips curled. "You know a hell of a lot then." At Rip's words, Carl Lancaster's green eyes had narrowed. He lifted a big hand to silence his brother, who was at the point of speaking again. "Go ahead, let's hear some more," he said to Rip. "Why don't you give Ned Jones a chance?" Rip said earnestly. "I know he didn't pull that hold up at Washoe Junction." At mention of Ned's name, both brothers stiffened. Carl Lancaster's eyes showed mild surprise. "How come you're sure Ned ain't guilty?" "He was with me the day of the holdup. And he was too drunk to move." The two brothers exchanged glances. A tight smile played over Mitch Lancaster's lips and there was a light of sudden understanding in his eyes. He cocked his head to one side, as if hearing the squeaky fiddle for the first time. "That, I take it. Is Ned Jones, sawing away as usual, Mitch Lancaster said. He leaned back in his chair and laughed. Rip's face went tight, whereupon Carl, Lancaster said. We're on our way to Los Angeles. But we can take time out to haul Ned Jones back to Carson City. Mitch Lancaster's mouth was a thin line across his face. The Mountain and Central will pay good money for Ned Jones dead or alive. It don't matter which to me. Personally, I'd like to put a slug in him, sort of to pay him back for what he did to me. All the time Mitch Lancaster had been talking, horrible realization was dawning slowly on Rip Campbell. He tried to swallow the hard lump in his throat. You didn't follow Ned here? He asked, a note of strain in his voice. Carl Lancaster shook his head. You talked too soon, kid. Then he leaned his heavy arms on the table, his voice lowering to a confidential tone. The Mountain and Central line is quite a ways from here, kid. This is California, not Ned. We might forget about Ned Jones, if the price was right. Rip licked his lips and Mitch Lancaster took his cue from his brother. All we're interested in is the dinero Ned's hide will bring. There was a moment when Rip tried to get his thoughts into a sensible pattern. Ned Jones had quit playing and the dance floor was beginning to clear. Cold fear lodged in Rip's stomach when he thought of what might happen if Ned spotted the Lancaster brothers. Then somebody yelled for more music, and the old fiddle began its sing-song wail once again. Rip let the air out of his lungs and looked down at the pair of railroad detectives at the table. Rip pushed back a chair, sat down at the table with the two men. I'll raise the money. How? How much will you take? 3,000, answered Carl Lancaster. The Mountain and Central price is 5. We'll take a loss because we're in a hurry to get to Los Angeles. Give me until tomorrow, Rip said. There was no emotion, no feeling at all showing on Carl Lancaster's face. Might be we could make a deal. It'll be tomorrow morning or nothing, kid. Rip nodded. But keep out of sight. If Ned sees you he might start shooting. Mitch Lancaster grinned crookedly. Suits me. His brother shook his head. We'll take the 3,000. And don't forget. There was 2 in on that hold up at Washoe Junction. You admitted that you was with Ned Jones that night. A flash of heat and cold passed through Rip's body. He opened his mouth to say something, but Mitch Lancaster didn't give him a chance. Don't forget, you may be buying your own freedom with that 3,000. Then they were gone, pushing through the crowd that milled around the swing doors. Rip started for the piano, then changed his mind. He went down a corridor that branched off the hall leading to the dressing rooms behind the small stage. He was conscious of the cold sweat on his brow when he knocked on the door of Bert Tolliver's office. Inside the small office, he found the owner of the Tamarack House counting stacks of gold coins. Tolliver looked up at Rip and at the gold. Beats digging it out of the ground. Rip nodded and Tolliver took a cigar from a box on the desk, licked the wrapper and settled back in his swivel chair. What's on your mind, kid? You told me that if I ever wanted to sell my claim, you'd buy it. I'm here to sell. Rip was conscious of old Ned's screeching fiddle, the mumble of voices, the clink of glassware from the big room. A fleeting smile crossed Tolliver's lips. I've changed my mind, he said bluntly. I've got more money out now than is safe. I don't want to extend myself any more at the present time. Dark blood touched Rip's cheeks and he leaned forward in sudden anger. Listen, Tolliver, you didn't change your mind that quick. You've got something up your sleeve. Tolliver stared at Rip through the blue serene of tobacco smoke from his cigar. I'm a gambler. I only bet on a sure thing. The words of the big man stung Rip, but he fought to control his underscore temper. While he gathered his thoughts, he forced his eyes from Tolliver's face, seeing the big wall safe in the corner, the glass gun case above it filled with all sorts of fancy weapons. I guess out here it's dog eat dog. San Francisco was bad enough. But it was never like this, never this rotten. For an instant Tolliver's eyes glittered, then he shrugged his heavy shoulders. Remember what I told you about playing the cards as they fall? Rip shook his head. Yesterday you wanted my claim, today you're backing down. One felt sorry for you, kid, that's all. You're a piano player, and a good one. You'll stiffen your fingers in time, digging in that muck all day, but it looks as if your claim at Cloudy Mountain isn't worth the price of the land. No claim at that end of the creek is paid out. The gold's at the other end. Then you don't want it? I don't want it. You've got to play it smart out here. And that's what you're not doing. Teaming up with Ned Jones will get you nothing but a bullet in the back or a hang rope. Anger was shooting a flame into Rip's mind. He backed to the door. You won't buy my claim because you saw me talking to the Lancasters. You think I'll either leave with Ned or get killed by the Lancasters. Either way, you think you can step in and take over my claim. Bert Tolliver flicked the diamond in his black tie and seemed to be thinking of something to say. You better watch your tongue, kid. Some men would kill you for that. Then that fleeting smile returned to his lips. Get out there and play something. You've got plenty of time to figure a way out. And remember what I told you. Play the cards as they fall. Rip Campbell went out into the rush and roar of the Tamarack House. He stood there, trying to figure out what to do next. And he wondered just how far loyalty went. Did he owe all this to Ned Jones? Before he had a chance to think further on the subject, Bert Tolliver came by. Better get to work, Rip. I'm paying you to play the piano, not stand around. Rip saw the man beckon to one of his bouncers. They went outside and Rip walked to the piano. Old Ned Jones seemed to sense that something was wrong, but he said nothing. He just sat there on his chair, a troubled light in his old eyes. Rip's fingers refused to work right when he sat down at the piano, and he muffed several notes when Lily Malone came out on the stage for a song. She glared down at him over a full bosom when she finished her first song. You trying to ruin my act, or are you drunk? She snapped. Neither, Lily, Rip said and played the introduction to her next number. And tell Grandpa to lay off the fiddle. He's worse than you, if possible. She took a hitch at her corset to take a deep breath. When she finished her song, the crowd applauded. Lily went back into the wings after giving Rip an icy stare. Old Ned put his fiddle down on the floor beside his chair. What's wrong, Rip? He asked. Rip got up from his chair and walked back toward the dressing rooms at the rear of the stage, Ned at his heels. Rip's heart was pumping wildly. He had to make a decision and make it fast. He reflected how peaceful his life had been in San Francisco, and he longed for the comparative protection a big city afforded one who was not used to the ways of violence. He waited until Ned was back in the dark corridor before he spoke. There's no use in not telling it straight, he said tensely. The Lancaster brothers are here. We've got to move on. Rip started to pull Ned toward the dressing rooms, but the old man balked. It was dark here and one side of the hall was lined with barrels and empty packing boxes. There ain't no use you getting in on this, Ned said. I should have known the Lancasters would follow me. An old coot like me with a fiddle under his arm is too easy to trail. Rip shook his head. The Lancasters didn't even know you were here. If I'd kept my mouth shut, things might have worked out differently. He was thinking of what Bert Tolliver had said about playing the cards as they fell. For a moment Ned Jones didn't answer. Then he squared his shoulders. You been a good friend, Rip. You was only trying to do what you thought was right. You stay. I'll go. We're in this together. The Lancasters are trying to make out that we both were in on that hold up at Washoe Junction. Come on. Rip was conscious of Ned's sharp intake of breath. Out front, the crowd was beginning to yell. We want music. We want music. Then Ned said. I done a lot of things in my life, Rip, but I never let down a friend. I believe you, Rip said, a note of irritation in his voice. But come on. It was then that he felt a premonition of danger. In the faint light that seeped in through the heavy curtains covering the front end of the corridor, Rip saw movement. He tried to duck the down sweep of the gun in Ned's hand. The barrel slanted expertly behind his ear. That was the last thing he remembered, for it seemed as if the roof had fallen in on him. Darkness pressed around Rip Campbell when he finally opened his eyes, and consciousness returned like a finger of light in his brain, ever widening as the seconds passed. As if from a great distance, he could hear the buzz of many voices and the rattle of glassware. His strength began to return and he was able to get to his knees, but the movement brought a stabbing pain to his head. He got to his feet and found that he had been lying behind an empty packing box in the corridor. Then the whole picture came back with startling clarity. The Lancaster brothers, Ned Jones. The old fool, Rip thought in sudden panic. He'll try to gun them down. And the thought brought sweat to his forehead. He knew that in that old derelict of the dark trails he had found a companionship that had been welded in gun smoke. This was the first time in his life that someone had needed him. For the first time in his life Rip realized that there were more important things than music and the easy life. There was the debt that one man owed another. He groped down the hall toward the heavy drapes that covered the entrance to the barroom. And at that moment a door opened and Lily Malone came out of a dressing room. She half turned, saw Rip, and her fat cheeks quivered. Her mouth opened but no sound came and her eyes were wide and dark with fright. Rip stepped forward. Wait. But at that moment the buxom singer found her voice and she let go with a scream that could have been heard at Ringer's Peak, 9 miles up the canyon. "It's him. The killer. Help!" And for a shattered second there was silence in the saloon. Then boots pounded the floor and chairs were overturned as men rushed toward the corridor. Rip saw Lily Malone dash into her dressing room, slam the door. Lily, underscored, and heard the clatter as the bolt went home. Instinctively he whirled and rushed out the back door. There was a shout in the hallway and a gun flamed. Window glass shattered and a sliver cut Rip's cheek. He lurched across the alley, grasped the overhang of a shed roof and pulled himself up. He lay flat as men came pouring out the rear door of the Tamarack house. Men spread out in both directions along the alleyway. Lantern light cut a yellow glow into the shadows. Lying there, Rip tried to figure out what had happened since Ned Jones had laid the gun barrel over his head. He got the answer when 2 men came down the alley, evidently from the diggings. And to their question, one of the men who had been hunting for Rip supplied the answer. The piano player and the old coot who played the fiddle jumped the Lancaster brothers, a couple of railroad detectives. The fiddler is Ned Jones. They both got away, but the Lancasters will get them. Then Bert Tolliver came to the rear door of the Tamarack house. "I got a hunch that Ned Jones is still in town," he said to the men in the alley. "When you find the piano player, bring him here and lock him up in the storeroom." Tolliver went back inside the saloon. There was darkness and silence in the alley now that the men were moving up to continue their search in other parts of Mammoth Camp. 10 minutes later Rip dropped to the ground beside the shed. The sudden jar set his head to throbbing, but he fought off the nausea which swept over him. He guessed that Ned Jones had tried to gun down both the Lancasters, trying to save his partner Rip. "I shouldn't have told him that the Lancasters figured me in on the holdup, too. He did it to save my skin." Rip pushed those thoughts from his mind as he went in the back door of the Tamarack house. Cautiously he stole down the gloomy passage, ready to flatten himself against the wall if anyone appeared. There was no light under Lily Malone's dressing room door. Peeking through the faded green curtains at the end of the hall, he saw Carl Lancaster, his arm in a sling, sitting at a table with his brother. There was a crowd around the table, but a lane had formed momentarily as a waiter came up with bottle and glasses. Mitch Lancaster was saying, "Ned Jones jumped us in the hotel room. Lucky my brother knocked the lamp off the table. Ned put a slug in Carl's arm, but we both nailed him. There was blood in the hall. But he got away," a man said. Carl Lancaster took a drink, his green eyes bright with hatred. "We'll get Ned. And we'll get the piano player that was with him." Mitch wiped his lips on the sleeve of his coat. "The railroad wants Ned Jones and the piano player dead or alive. I'm thinking it's dead they'll be." Some of the men laughed nervously. Back in the corridor, Rip's heart was bumping his ribs and there was that hard lump back in his throat again. He moved down the hall to Bert Tolliver's office. No light showed under the door. He tried the knob and found that he could open the door. Inside, he struck a match and made his way to the gun cabinet he had seen over the safe. He didn't even fumble with the big padlock. He waited until the noise out front was loudest, then smashed the glass with a paperweight he found on the desk. Striking another match, he surveyed the guns and picked a loaded 5-shot bulldog pistol. He put this in his pocket. Sweat was cold on his forehead as he stood there thinking of what the Lancaster brothers had said. It was plain that Ned Jones had tried to jump the pair in their hotel room. He had been shot. There was blood on the hall carpet. And as he stood there, Rip asked himself what he could possibly gain by all this. Why not run while he had the chance? Panic swept over came in through the door but he managed to quiet the wild beat of his heart. He slipped out of Tolliver's office and, through the crack in the curtains, saw the Lancasters prepare to leave. A man in a wide-brimmed hat. "Stage for Los Angeles pulling out, folks," he announced. The Lancasters got up and headed for the door. Rip knew what he had to do. He went out through the back door and into the alley and around the far side of the Tamarack house. He knew that all the pieces of this puzzle didn't fit. The Lancasters were going out on that stage. Yet he knew that if there was a chance of collecting a bounty on Ned Jones, they wouldn't be leaving. It didn't add up. But he didn't have time to think of that. And right then and there he saw a familiar figure lurching down the boardwalk toward him. It was old Ned Jones, and he was holding his left hand to his side, dragging one leg after him as if it was weighted down. At the front of the Tamarack house stood the stagecoach, the driver on top, the 4-horse team ready to go. Rip saw the gun in Ned's hand. He ran forward, tried to pull the old man into the shadows. But Ned shoved him aside. The Lancasters, they got me. It didn't work out. I got to kill them, Rip. Then, Rip Campbell's heart seemed to crowd up into his throat, for standing there on the boardwalk were the Lancaster brothers. Without thinking of his philosophy that guns and music didn't mix, Rip went into action. The boardwalk cleared suddenly, leaving the Lancasters in full view. Guns whipped up and Rip didn't wait for anything. He just began to fire his short-barreled gun. He was conscious of the roar of Ned's weapon at his side. He saw Mitch Lancaster pitch sideways, as if hit by a stone. Old Ned triggered again, then dropped. Rip saw Mitch Lancaster roll over on his back and lift his gun. The man fired and Rip felt the bullet chew into his right leg. He fell to the dusty ground, and as he looked up, he saw Carl Lancaster standing there, both legs braced, his gun held steady. There was no time to think, no time to aim. Rip pulled aside, conscious of the rearing stagecoach team, the shouting men trying to get out of the line of fire. Rip pulled the trigger as fast as he could. He saw Carl Lancaster stumble and put a bullet into the ground. It was so close that gravel stung Rip's face. Carl didn't move, but Mitch Lancaster was trying to lift his gun from where he lay prone in the gutter beside the boardwalk. Rip knew he didn't have the strength to fire another shot. Mitch Lancaster's face was close, then far off. Blackness cut into the corners of his vision. A pencil point of flame lanced out from the shadows, touched Mitch Lancaster's body, and the man died there in the dusty street of Mammoth Camp. It was Bert Tolliver who came into view, a smoking gun in his hand. After a crowd had gathered and Ned and Rip were carried to the doctor's office, Tolliver looked down at the cot where Rip was lying. "You almost played your last piano, kid. I didn't buy your claim because I knew the Lancasters would only double-cross you. The station agent at Washoe Junction was in on that holdup. He confessed his part in it when railroad officials confronted him. He piled the deadwood on the Lancasters." Rip tried to grin, but he couldn't quite make it, the pain in his leg was so intense. "Guess I overplayed my hand." Tolliver smiled. "You sure did. The Lancasters were heading for New Range because the law was on their tail for that holdup. They were the murmured boys who got off with the 5,000 in bullion." Old Ned looked up from the cot across the room and grinned at Rip. "I'm honing to tuck my fiddle under my chin. Maybe Tolliver will give us our jobs back. Soon's you can hobble down to the Tamarack House, you can go to work," Tolliver told him. "Meantime, the two of you can loaf up at your claim and maybe dig out a little gold. You got the best piece of dirt on the creek." While the doctor probed for the bullet in his leg, Rip gritted his teeth and looked up at Tolliver. "I reckon everything would have been all right if I'd kept my mouth shut." "Next time remember to play the cards as they fall," Tolliver said. Just before he passed out, Rip. "I guess that guns and music mix, but it's doggone uncomfortable at times." The end.